Hey guys, how's it going? I was up here in the boat getting it cleaned out and getting rods and stuff ready. Going back up to Erie here in a few days, and I thought I would do just a little, I guess you'd call it, review of these LiTime lithium batteries. I was real hesitant for a long time on getting them, but as I start adding more and more to this boat, it's getting heavier and heavier, and those lead acids were just heavy. And with these two 100 amp hour, I saved close to 60 pounds. So that was the majority of the reason why I got them. You know, anything after that is just a bonus. But they've been great so far. I've used them a little over a month now. I'm pretty close to the Ohio River. Most of my fishing is on the Ohio, trolling, up current. And normally most of the trips are, 5-6 hours in the evening till dark. And I never had issues with the old batteries running out. I'm sure they were, lower than they probably should be, but after a good 5-6 hours trolling, 1.5 to 1.7, up current, but then you use a little less coming back down, so that kind of evens it out. I'm usually in the 40 to 45% range with these batteries when I'm all done. The one really nice thing about these is the Bluetooth. It's really nice to see. I mean, it's got live time. You can see how many amps you're drawing at that time, and it gives you real time, like how long to expect, and pretty neat. You use a lot less, I would say, when you're trolling than I thought the motor would use, when you look up the spec sheet. But on average, I'm just shy over 10 amps I'm drawing, which is 5.5 to 7, depending on the wind and the current with the trolling motor, to hold 1.5, 1.7 mile an hour. And this isn't a heavy boat, but it's not a light boat. It's an 18-foot basically ski boat that slowly got converted to a straight fishing boat pretty much. Recently added downriggers, rod trees. But I finally made up to the Erie for the first time last Friday, I think it was, Saturday. And I'm hooked, and I just can't wait to get back up there. I love trolling on the Ohio, but there's just, with the current and the depth changes, and you can get some absolute monster fish, but you really have to work for it. You're constantly changing depths, or you're just losing all your stuff. But the work is worth it. Now, that being said, I've never fished Erie, never really trolled lakes, really. Kind of new to it all. Just kind of what I read online, that they were out, 40 to 50 feet. So I went out of Walnut Creek and launched and just drove till I saw, 45 feet on the fish finder, and immediately started marking fish. And I was running spoons off the downriggers and dipsies with worm harnesses to start, and I couldn't keep up with the rods. I was by myself, and it was just one after another. It was a blast, and it kind of spoiled me. I know there's days where it's not going to be like that, but when you work real hard on the Ohio or river in general, trolling, when you get to a big lake like that, it's almost, it spoils you. Not saying it's not skill or a lot of work, because it is, but being able to set your depths off a chart or whatever, and just run with it, and then adjust from there, and not have to worry, and just going over massive schools of fish. If you've never done it, I would recommend it. And I picked up these actually because I was low on worms. These are these Gulp Alive, and they're night crawler. They outfished I mean, there could have been different depths and different dipsy colors in that, but those outfished live night crawlers. I think I maybe caught one on a real crawler, and all the rest came on those. But most of my big fish came on, thundersticks and bandits, like deep diving cranks. But majority of the fish came on, a dipsy with crawler harness. But yeah, they were, 1 to 3 footers. They weren't crazy, more towards the low side of that. But there was a steady wind, and the trolling motor was working a little harder than normal. It was about almost 6 hours straight trolling at 1.5 miles. I didn't want to run it too hard, because a lot of what I've read, I think it's in the manual too for the minnkotas. If you don't have the new Quest version, they don't want you to run it over 8 or 8.5, I believe. So I guess it'll burn it up because of the sustained output of these lithiums. So, coming into the waves, I was going with the waves. You could really crank it out and be where you want to be. But going into the waves or side waving it, you kind of had to watch. I didn't want to burn up my motor. I don't know how true it is, but if they say in the manual not to do it, I'm not going to do it. But yeah, they were down 40% when I was done, which is pretty good. But I've had this on Lake Ontario trolling for kings, and it's a different situation, but the waves are similar. And I didn't run my old down here, 27 lead acids. I didn't run those down. I posted on a minnkota site about my review of the batteries, and that was a whole nother thing, because my charger would say that the lead acids were usually around 40%, but everybody bashed me saying that you can't go off the troller, I need a shunt, and on and on and on about what my lead acids really were. And all I can say is I'm going off the charger. I don't know what they really were, but I never ran them dead, and they lasted me 3 years and were still going strong when I switched them. I just switched them basically for the weight. So, sure that the lithiums definitely run longer. There's no doubt about it. But in my experience, amp hours are amp hours. I get running lead acids, they say below, 30-40% is hard on them. It may be, I'm sure it is, but I did it for years on end with no issues. So what I would say is, if you're not real concerned with weight and you're not running your lead acids dead, if you're not going on multiple day trips, or if you can plug it in every day, I think if I were to do it again, other than the weight, I would stick with the lead acids, just because the cost difference is huge. I could buy this $100 lead acids years upon end to equal the cost of these. But again, they're similar. Amp hour rating is an amp hour rating. It doesn't magically get any more. I understand you get a little more out of these because you can run them basically to zero, and you can't with the lead acids because they start to drop off. But in my normal 5-6 hour fishing trip, it's really no different. They both end up at the same same percentage wise, or close to. I can't say that because people bash me for saying that. but then when I talk about just an honest review on these, and I like them, I'm not putting them down. People just put out these wild claims that, I fish for 16 hours and 20-mile-an-hour winds, and I still have 98%. There's no way. The math doesn't lie. If your trolling motor is drawing 10 amps, or even less than that, for even 2 hours, you're going to use more than 98% of your battery. So you could tell people just fudge numbers, and I think a lot of it is people, well, one, people are pro staff for these batteries, which doesn't help flood the market with unrealistic claims, but you get people who spend a ton of money. You know, one, they spend a ton of money and they just want to justify the purchase, and they make people think that you can run days on end and it's the greatest thing ever. Or two, these people, what I think a lot of people are doing is spot locking. And if you watch the Bluetooth app, when I spot lock, even in steady current and wind on the Ohio, I mean, it basically hardly registers for amp draw on the battery. I mean, that's where I think a lot of people are getting, they think that their motor is working hard doing spot lock. And yes, you could go days, probably a week, without having to charge and still have 20%. But I think a lot of people think that they're using a lot more than they really are when they're spot locking. And honestly, even in current, spot lock hardly uses anything. So I think that's where a lot of these crazy claims come from. And then you get someone who sees that, goes off that, spends, you know, over $600 on batteries, and then comes online and says, hey, I'm only getting 7 hours trolling on, you know, Erie with this. What's wrong with my batteries? When realistically, there's nothing. I mean, you're just working them, and it is what it is. And then people come on there and tell them that their batteries are screwed up or they're junk batteries because they can spot lock for 4 days straight. And, well, you're not using that much. So that's just something to think about when you're thinking about making the jump to lithium. And I'm not leaning either way on these. They're great. I don't regret purchasing them. The weight alone, you can feel it in the boat. I mean, on a boat, you know, only 18 foot, you're going to feel 60-pound difference. That's a lot. But yeah, they've been great. I just don't believe all the things you see online, I guess is what I'm getting at, because people like to inflate their numbers or don't understand really what they're using. And I'm glad I didn't listen to a lot of the recommendations where people said, oh, get 50 amp hour lithiums, you will run for days on that. And no, I mean, I wouldn't, my trip last week to Erie, I would have been dead in the water 2 hours before I was even done fishing. And with these, I mean, at least I was at 40%, and I could have gone another probably 4 hours. So I mean, trolling heavy, I could definitely probably get 10 hours out of them, you know, a little more, a little less, depending on waves and wind. But that's just something to think about. You know, they're great. They really are. They, the stuff that they can do with them is just, it's pretty amazing now. But I just thought I'd give a little honest review on them. And I know there's a lot of talking there, but I just thought I'd give a review here about batteries for someone who's on the fence about them. Just maybe give you a second thought. Like I said, I think they're worth the money, especially if you're doing longer trips. But if you're only running your lead acids down 40-50% and you want to get the same size capacity lithium, if you're not worried about weight, it's really not worth it. I mean, you could buy battery every 2 years for the next 10 years before it equals the cost of these. So that's just something to think about. So yeah, I'll try to do a video when I go out on Erie. Hopefully it's as good as last time. Thanks, guys.